Rounding off this week, we're going to look more deeply into the topic of renunciation. The renunciant's path, often called Sanyasa or Samsara, is a life of renunciation and the fourth stage within the Hindu systems of the four life stages known as the ashramas, with the first three being the brahmacharya, basically a bachelor student, the grihastha, the householder, the vanaprastha, the forest dweller or the retired. Sanyasa is traditionally conceptualized for men or women in the latter years of their lives, but young brahmacharis have had the choice to skip the householder and retirement stages and just become ascetics. They renounce their worldly and materialistic pursuits and dedicate their lives to spiritual pursuits in this understanding. Sanyasa is a form of asceticism. It is marked by renunciation of material desires and prejudices, represented by a state of disinterest and detachment from material life. It has the express purpose of spending one's life in peaceful, love-inspired, spiritual settings and leading a very simple existence. An individual in sannyasa is known as a sannyasi in the male construction, or a sannyasini in the female construction, in Hindu contexts at least. This closely parallels the notions of the sadhu and sattvi traditions of Jain monasticism, a term that comes to be used in Hindu contexts also. And it closely also parallels the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis of Buddhism, or the monk and nun traditions of Christianity that are eventually popularized in India as well. Sanyasa has historically been a stage of renunciation, ahimsa, nonviolence, peaceful existence, and emphasizing a very simple understanding. And let's keep this understanding present in our minds while moving forward. Nonetheless, we must also keep in mind the historical fact that after the invasions and establishment of Muslim rule in India from the 12th century through the British colonial period and the British Raj, parts of the Shaiva, Goshain, and the Vaishnava, the Bairagi ascetics, metamorphosized into specific military orders, where they developed martial arts and created military strategies for this ascetic life, including non-traditional aspects of warfare. Our contemporary conception of karma is not far off from the Upanishad's vision. In Sanskrit, the word karma means action, work, or deed, and according to the sages, our actions, works, or deeds have implications and consequences. This is also true in the realm of thoughts or desires. Now, in the contemporary understanding, you might slip on a banana today, and so you might think that you did something bad yesterday. However, in the Upanishadic vision, or the traditional understanding of karma, it's more past lives. Good things happened today, good things happened in the past life, or there was good karma created in the past life. Now, this also applies more broadly to concepts, feelings, emotions. So, feeling bad today, perhaps there was something bad done in a past life, or a bad feeling in a past life. However, feeling good today, perhaps there was a good feeling in the past life, or good action in the past life. There are also three different types of karma. Prarabdha karma is experienced through the present body and is only part of sanchita karma, which is the sum of one's past karmas. There is also agami karma, which is the result of current decision and action. So you have prarabdha karma, sanchita karma, and then the last one being agami, A-G-A-M-I. Those are the three parts of karma. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which is numbers 7 and 12, states that the doer of deeds wanders about and obtains rebirth according to his deeds, but postulates an omnipotent creator. In this sense, Ishvara and the doctrine of grace bestowed by Ishvara. Ishvara is the great refuge of all, and a person attains immortality when blessed by Ishvara, or alternatively, in the presence of Ishvara's pleasure. A person can be free from sorrow through the grace of Ishvara. Therefore, the Shvetashvatara Upanishad postulates a supreme being whose grace and devotees provides a way of escape from the law of karma. As Adi Sankara stated in his commentary on the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, if we dedicate all our works to Ishvara, we will not be subject to the law of karma. So what does this mean? Essentially, the Shvetashvatara Upanishad is promising a way to escape the law of karma through devotion to Ishvara. So there's not just this law of karma, but there's also a path to cessation of karma through devotion to Ishvara. Now, as I mentioned, in the Upanishads, karma is connected to samsara, the cycle of reincarnation. The cycle of reincarnation, it appears in a developed form, but without mechanistic details in the early Upanishads. So it's not present in the early Vedas, but it's present in the later Vedas and in the Upanishads, not part of that early Vedic religion. It's kind of interesting. This is a new concept. The full exposition of samsaric doctrine is found in the Shramanic religions, such as Buddhism and Jainism, as well as various other schools of Hindu philosophy, from about the mid-1st century or mid-1st millennium BCE. The samsara doctrine is tied to the karma theory of Indian religions, and the liberation from samsara has been a core spiritual quest of Indic traditions and South Asian traditions, as well as those that are related. Liberation from samsara is called moksha, nirvana, mukti, or kaivalya, depending on the interpretation. The concept of samsara is developed in the post-Vedic times. It is traceable to the Samhita layers of certain sections of the Rig Veda, but it relies upon really this Upanishadic expounding upon these earlier periods, or these earlier interpretations. While the idea is mentioned in the Samhita layers, there's a lack of clear exposition there. The expounding really comes from the Upanishads and much later Upanishads. Damien Cohn states that the notion of a cyclical birth and death and rebirth appears around 800 BCE. So at 800 BCE, you're really getting a new interpretation here. The word samsara, along with moksha, appears in several principal Upanishads, such as in the Katha Upanishad or in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So it also appears in the Maitri Upanishad, a lesser Upanishad. The word samsara is related to samsarti, the latter of which is referring to the course of mundane existence, transmigration, flow, circuit, or stream. Samsara is hence often conceptualized as a river, or a flow, or a stream. The Upanishads, part of the scriptures of Hindu traditions, primarily focus on the self-liberation aspect of samsara, this goal of self-liberation. A later text that we'll look at, the Bhagavad Gita, discusses various paths to liberation, which is a much more sort of understood version of liberation. The Upanishads state that There's perhaps a very optimistic view in this interpretation, but there's a perfectibility of human nature. That's the implication of the Upanishads. You could theoretically become perfect. And there's a goal of human effort in these texts to continuously journey towards self-perfection and self-knowledge and end samsara. The aim of this spiritual quest in the Upanishadic traditions or Upanishadic religions is to find true self and to know one's soul and state that one believes this essence, and this essence might even lead to a blissful existence, a state of freedom, and that is what is called moksha. So how does one obtain moksha? Well, one has to follow the paths of asceticism, okay? Asceticism in South Asian religions includes a spectrum of diverse practices from a contemporary setting and even in the modern period. This ranges from mild self-discipline and self-imposed poverty and simple living of Buddhism and Hinduism to very severe austerities and self-mortification practices of monks in Jainism and the now extinct Ajivikas in the pursuit of salvation. In mystical usage, the word fakir refers to a man's spiritual need for God, who alone is self-sufficient and comes actually from Muslim origins. But the term has become applied, it's become applied to really Hindus in India as well. So in many communities, Hindu ascetics are actually also called by this Muslim term fakir. This term became more popular, especially in the early modern and modern periods, and began to replace other terms which remain still popular, Gosvamin, Sadhu, Bhikkhu, and other designations. Sadhu has a Jain bent to it, but is used in Hinduism also. Bhikkhu is usually pretty explicitly a Buddhist term. But the term fakir in colloquial speaking might sometimes refer to Buddhist monastics, which is sort of an interesting term. Gosvamin is a Sanskrit term that derives from one of the sastras, a group of texts that we'll get to later in the Puranic period especially and onward, but it's a term that refers to an owner of cattle, but it also refers to a holy man, and it is used as an honorary title. A sadhu, or sadhvi, or sadvin, is a religious ascetic, a mendicant, or any holy person in Hinduism and Jainism who has renounced the worldly life, and they are sometimes alternatively referred to as yogi, sannyasi, or vairagi. This literally means someone who practices sadhana or follows a path of spiritual discipline. Although the vast majority of sadhus are also yogis, not all yogis are sadhus. A sadhu is solely dedicated to achieving moksha, this notion of liberation, and the fourth and final ashrama stage of life, through meditation and contemplation of the Brahman. So I've discussed several aspects of liberation, and we need to focus on it directly. There are at least 4 different concepts of liberation in Hinduism and Hindu-Buddhist contexts. The Nirvana one we will set aside because it's really quite explicitly a Buddhist concept, but sometimes the term is used in Hindu contexts as a synonym for mukti or moksha. Mukti is the concept of spiritual liberation in South Asian religions. Moksha, also called vimoksha, vimukti, or mukti, is a term in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism for various forms of emancipation, enlightenment, liberation, and release. So moksha is very specifically liberation from the cycle of samsara, whereas mukti is emancipation, enlightenment, liberation, and release. It's a little bit broader. As I said, nibbana is really specifically commonly associated with the blowing out of the lamp as a metaphor. Now, it's most often used in Buddhism, but occasionally it comes up in Hinduism and Jainism and Sikhism as well. And it represents this ultimate state of soteriological release, the liberation from rebirth in samsara, ultimate liberation in that sense. Now, Kaivalya is the ultimate goal of a Raja Yoga, and it means solitude, detachment, or isolation. A further derivation from Kavala, the word for alone or isolated. It is the isolation of Purusha from Prakrti and liberation from rebirth. It is also a term for moksha, although this interpretation has sometimes been viewed as controversial due to the predominant view that it is impossible to isolate Purusha from Prakriti or Prakrti, and vice versa. This being said, Kaivalya Mukti is described in some Upanishads, such as the Muktika and Kaivalya Upanishads. It is the most superior form of moksha in these descriptions, which can grant liberation both within this life as Jivan Mukti and after death as Videha Mukti. It is also the essence understood to be the true teaching in this interpretation of all the Upanishads. So it is the essence of the Upanishadic texts. For your discussion thread, I'd like you to start and participate in two key discussions. So we're talking two separate threads here. The first thread will focus on the question, how would you describe the innovations of the Upanishads as distinct from the rest of the earlier Vedas? So if you think about this, what we're really talking about is a sort of Vedic, early Vedic religion on one hand, and then the Upanishadic Vedic or later Vedic or Upanishadic religion on the other hand. So how are those distinct? And then the second thread can consider the following question. Do you see the Vedic religion as distinct from later Vedic religion, i.e. in the Upanishads? Why or why not? And then you could expound, okay, early Vedic religion, is that a distinct religion? Upanishadic religion, is that a distinct religion? Do these seem different from other types of Hinduism as far as you understand them colloquially so far? Why or why not? Go ahead and make a quick post and we'll get the discussion going.